Ann Wilson was only 17 years old when 3 different record labels offered her contracts. By the time she was 20, Ann's debut single had hit #1.
Ann Wilson's star is quickly rising on the Christian music scene. Her single, My Jesus, hit #1 last year, and Ann won K-Love's 2022 Female Artist of the Year. At just 20 years old, Ann has already tasted great success and bitter pain. The latter came when her beloved brother Jacob died in 2017. Ann recounts how she's found hope despite the heartache in her debut book, My Jesus.
Please welcome to the 700 Club, Ann Wilson. Ann, it's great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Boy, reading your book, you have been on a fast track to fame. That's a lot of pressure. It's a busy, busy schedule. How are you handling all of that?
You know, it's definitely been hard, but God is so good and he gives me grace to get through it all. And honestly, it's kind of a gift to look back at my life and see all the pain and trauma I had to go through, but God is doing so much good through it. So it's a big blessing for sure.
When you were 15, you lost your brother and your best friend, Jacob. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so my older brother, Jacob, he passed away in a car accident when he was 23 years old. I was 15 years old at the time, and it was so tragic. You know, when you're a little girl, at least for me, my biggest fear was losing my parents, but I never dreamed of losing a sibling. And it was so traumatic for me and my family, just so much pain and grief. But through the midst of that, we met Jesus in the most precious way, and we grew in our faith so much through that season. And that's actually how I got into music, was through the loss of my brother. And I sang for the first time in front of anyone at my brother's funeral. So God did so much through the loss of him.
I don't know how you did that. As I'm reading that in the book, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't think I could have gotten up and done that at such a significant and painful time. Tell us about singing at the funeral, what you sang, and what did that song lead to?
So I sang What a Beautiful Name by Hillsong, and it's such an incredible moment. I just remember sitting down at the piano about to start the song, and I heard God's voice say to me, "And this is what I am calling you to do. I'm calling you to praise and worship my name." And so I remember just leaving the funeral that day with such heartbreak and grief and, you know, all these feelings of just being brokenhearted, but also leaving that day knowing that God was calling me to something greater and higher, and that music was some type of music was in my future. And so that ended up leading to me making a YouTube video of that song and putting it on YouTube. And then that video went viral. And that's how I met my previous manager and started working in the Nashville scene and, you know, writing songs and meeting record labels. And so God used that one time at the funeral and my yes to him to sing in front of people for the first time, and basically launched my whole career from it.
Yes is a powerful response to God, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. Yes.
You know, for a long time, you wanted to be an astronaut, quite a different pursuit. Was it at the funeral that you knew you were called to be a singer?
I did. I felt like this desire to be an astronaut was removed from me, and it was replaced with the desire to worship Jesus. I think it was the perspective shift of just me realizing that nothing on this earth really mattered, but that what I was called to was to tell people about Jesus and to lead people to him. And I think when you go through something as tragic as losing a loved one, especially a sibling that close to you, it just puts things in perspective. And it started to kind of make me just fix my eyes on heaven and realize that that's the final, that's the end, you know, and that's my goal, is to lead people to Jesus and get as many people to heaven as possible with me. So I really feel like the Lord just removed that desire out of my heart and replaced it with worshiping him.
You know, I think people sometimes, if they haven't experienced a loss like you and your family have, don't realize how deep and how long the grief goes on. I mean, it's overwhelming some days. What gave you hope in the midst of your grief?
Jesus is the only one that got me through. I don't know how people do it without Jesus because it's incredibly hopeless. And I just remember having this moment after my brother passed away, like, I mean, right after I found out, where I just felt like the Lord was asking me, Anne, are you going to trust me or are you not? And I remember turning around and just saying, Jesus, I trust you. And it was in that moment that I just knew that God was going to get me through, and he did. And I would not be here today without Jesus. The pain was too great. And if I hadn't have had him, I don't even know where I would be. And it was just too much to bear without him. So Jesus gave me hope. His word gave me hope. Knowing that I'm going to spend all eternity with Jacob and Jesus in heaven gave me hope. And that's what continues to get me through each and every day.
Yeah. Your debut single became a #1 hit. You wrote My Jesus, is that right?
I did, yes.
What was that experience like?
It was amazing. That song has, reached so many people, and it's a blessing to be a part of, just a small part of it. We wrote that song out of me and my two good friends, Matthew West and Jeff Pardo. We really wrote it out of the loss of Jacob. And coming into the writing room, I had this title idea called My Jesus. And I had found that title in my journals. Right after Jacob passed away, I started to journal. And I basically just would write down the day's date, and then I would write down that God got me through another day. And then years later, I realized that I had never referred to God as any other name other than my Jesus. And I just remember having this moment of just feeling the Lord tell me that the reason I had written My Jesus over and over again was that it's because it's the truth that I am his and he is mine, and we have a personal relationship with each other. And so we ended up writing that day really about just the personal relationship that we can all have with Jesus, but most importantly, what Jesus did through the loss of my brother. And that ended up being my first single and just the launch of my whole career. And it's just been amazing to see how that song has impacted so many lives, and that God used one little title from my journal to do that. It's amazing.
And it's the title of your new book, also called My Jesus.
Yes.
People don't have to lose someone, have such a deep loss as you did to take away the message from the book. How would you define what you want readers to take away from your book?
So it's called My Jesus, From Heartache to Hope. And I think that's really the overarching message of the book. As Christians, we're promised persecution. We're going to go through suffering. We're promised it in the Bible, but there's such hope when you believe in Jesus and have a relationship with him. And so this book really is for everyone, no matter if you've walked through loss or not. This overarching theme is that we live in a broken world. We live in a fallen world, but there's hope through Jesus. So I hope that this book inspires people and encourages them and reminds them that there is hope when you claim Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and that he's going to get you through everything, no matter what you're facing in your life.
Yeah, well, that's a good message for you as you move forward into this very big music career that God has opened doors to. And we just wish you the best. Praying for you. Want people to know your book is called My Jesus, From Heartache to Hope, and it is available wherever books are sold. Ann Wilson, congratulations on your awards, and thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.